over a new Labor Department directive. Welcome, everybody. I'm Eric Bowling in for Neil Cavuto, and this is Your World. Republicans today blasting the White House for what they are calling a pure pre-election bait and switch. The Labor Department is now telling defense contractors there's no need to warn workers about pending layoffs, even though the law requires a 60 days notice. Mandatory defense cuts set to kick in this January, meaning the first notices would have gone out right before Election Day. Republican Congressman Allen West on what he's going to do about that in just a minute. But first, to the Washington Times' Stephen Dinan to break the story down. So let's just break the story down. Currently, the Department of Defense is supposed to give employees a 60-day notice of layoffs pending. So you do 60 days back, would put it right around November 1st. When again? When's that election again? What date's that election?
That's November 6th.
Okay, so go ahead. What happened?
Yeah, so it's not the Defense Department, it's the defense contractors who have to do this. Businesses are required by federal law, if they have mass layoffs, they're required, or if they expect mass layoffs, they're required to tell their employees at least 60 days out. It's called the WARN Act, and it's a federal law. And so a lot of these contractors had already said, hey, we're afraid of these cuts that are coming, the automatic spending cuts. We're going to have to invoke the WARN Act. We're going to have to warn our employees. And of course, as you said, the timing is right before the election. The Labor Department yesterday, an Assistant Secretary of Labor actually issued official guidance from the Labor Department, which oversees the WARN Act, saying, no, not so fast. We don't think you really need to issue those warnings. We're convinced that the sequesters, the automatic cuts, will be eliminated by then, and so we don't think you need to do that. And even if the sequesters do go into effect, they fall under a certain part of the law that basically makes them an unforeseen circumstance, and so then you're protected from not having done that. You know, the defense contractors are not so sure, and actually if you talk to employment lawyers, they're not so sure either. Their advice seems to generally be it's a good idea to go ahead and warn. So they're essentially in conflict with the Labor Department.
So let me get this straight. They're telling the contractors that they don't need to have the 60-day window because they think they're going to get a deal done and sequester's not going to actually take place. Is that right so far?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
One more step. What if they don't get a deal? What if they do have to sequester $1.2 trillion, $600 billion in defense spending, and these people are going to get laid off January 1st? Don't they have lawsuits? Can't they sue the contractors and therefore the Department of Defense?
That's exactly the right question, and the answer is we don't know, but that option is certainly out there. It'll certainly go to court whether the employees win or not, and that's what the lawyers are telling these companies right now is, look, to be very safe, you should definitely look at go ahead and doing this. And of course, you know, the Labor Department's defense, they throw up quotes. In the memo they issued yesterday, they use quotes from some members of Congress saying, we all want to solve the sequesters. That's a lot less certain than we will solve the sequesters. So sure. It really leaves them in a tough position.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much, Mr. Dinan. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, critics slamming the timing of the new Labor Department directive on layoffs. Florida Republican Congressman and friend of mine, Allen West, has some questions also. By the way, we did ask the Labor Department to comment on all this. So far, crickets, sir. But, Colonel, talk to us about the timing. The timing, boy, it certainly feels political to me. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong whatsoever, Eric, and absolutely it is political. Because it was just a couple of weeks ago, I sit on the Armed Services Committee here in the House, and we had a hearing with several leaders in the defense contracting industry, with Lockheed Martin, with EADS, and also Pratt Whitney. And they very simply said that we will have to follow the Workers Adjustment Retraining Notification Act, the WARN Act, which is a 1988 law, because as you just brought off in your initial segment, you could be opening yourself up to lawsuits if you don't provide this warning. And I think that here again you see an Obama administration that is looking at what a Pentagon official talked about just about 2 or 3 days ago about the WARN Act and the fact that these notices will have to go out. Now they want to once again pick and choose which laws that they believe they have to adhere to. And this is nothing more than a politically motivated stance coming from the administration and from the Department of Labor.
Colonel, it sounds like they think they're going to get a deal together before the sequestration takes effect. Are you as confident as they are?
Well, I will tell you this. In the House of Representatives, we voted on a package that would stave off the sequestration for 1 year. It's sitting on the desk of Harry Reid, so I think that will let the American people know, and especially our men and women in uniform know, exactly who's trying to take action to stave off this sequestration. You know, the Department of Defense is only about 19.7% of the overall budget of the United States of America, but yet we're trying to put about 50 to 55%, a little more maybe, of the budget cuts on the Department of Defense at a time when the world is more volatile than I remember in the 22 years that I served active duty.
Sure, sir. And talk to me a little bit about what the $600 billion of defense cuts would mean to the military. You spent a fantastic 20-plus year career in the military. What would that mean to the military?
Well, first of all, let's set the stage. In the Budget Control Act of 2011, we all decided to take away $487 billion over the next 10 years from the Department of Defense, and we all agree with that. But now you're talking about taking the Department of Defense, our military, to the smallest ground force that we have had since 1940. That's the Army and the Marine Corps. The smallest Navy that we have had, fleet of naval ships, since 1915, and the smallest Air Force in the history of the modern United States Air Force. They will lose 9 tactical fighter squadrons. And so when you hear people look at all of the hot spots across the world and people asking us to get involved in Syria, with what, I would ask, as far as, you know, us looking at cutting back our military. And you continue to hear nothing from the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, which is President Obama, as far as what he is going to do to stave off this sequestration, which we have taken action in the House on.
Colonel, weigh in a little bit. President Obama had not visited Israel, had no policy on Israel attacking Iran, given what's going on in Iran with nuclear weapons. But when Governor Romney went over to Israel to meet with Bibi Netanyahu, somehow a leak came from the White House that there was a deal in place, or at least some talks in place, as to where the White House stands given an attack by Israel on Iran. What about the timing of that, sir?
Well, once again, it's politically motivated. You have an administration that is running everything by political polls or campaign promises, which is why we have the Iranian Revolutionary Guard in Syria in the first place, because American generals asked for a residual force to be in Iraq to put on the borders between Iraq and Iran and Syria and Iraq and up with the Kurds, our strong ally. But now we saw a campaign promise. So here is a president who has not gone to visit Israel whatsoever. He's been to Saudi Arabia, he's been to Egypt, he's been to Turkey. He gave these very glaring speeches, and now when Governor Mitt Romney goes to Israel, he releases these details coming from a closed-door meeting, which once again leads us to understand that it's all about the leaks if it can help them politically.
Sir, let me ask you this. We only have about 30, 45 seconds or so. If we do go into sequestration, we do have these massive military cuts. Do we have the assets in place to help Israel or to support an Israel attack on Iran?
No, you will not. If we go into sequestration, it's not just the effects that you're going to have in losing 200,000 men and women in uniform. We already talked about the loss of the capability and capacity, but it's also the loss about the technological advancement and the base you have coming from our Department of Defense industrial partners that we may not be able to catch back up to.
All right, Colonel, always a pleasure spending some time with you, sir.